These include the restoration of mangroves and wetlands, the removal of obstacles such as bridges and dikes, and also the implementation of land use management. These NBS measures can complement traditional engineering solutions. NBS are not a panacea. Therefore, we think that the hybrid, a combination of green and gray infrastructure, could provide practical solutions. There are many factors that can contribute to successful NBS. Again, for the flood risk management as an example, the key success factors include the landscape perspective, the evidence-based decision-making, and the community involvement. Based on our experiences and lessons learned, we have already produced quite a few knowledge products. These include guidelines and case studies. We have also implemented a series of webinars and trainings to raise awareness and to build the capacity. Building on this, we will launch a new initiative called the NBS program. The program will provide holistic support to the pipeline projects. For example, the NBS clinic will provide technical advisory service to improve the project design of the pipeline projects with a possible NBS component included. That's all for now. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you, Isao. Really appreciate your presentation. So next up, we have another virtual presenter, Lilian Mupende. She's going to be talking about Kigali NBS interventions, urban wetlands and urban forestry. She's the NAP lead, Rwanda, the Global Green Growth Institute. So Lilian, take it away.
Thank you very much. If I could kindly have my slides shared.
Yes, I think we can see them now.
Great, thank you. So I'll be speaking about an ongoing project that we are jointly implementing with one of the government institutions and a wider range of stakeholders, the potential for leveraging urban nature-based solutions to mitigate destructive flooding that's affecting the cities of Rwanda. Next slide, please. So, unfortunately, I can't read this very clearly. Sorry, let me use my own slides on this side. So we are developing or implementing this hand in hand with the Rwanda Environment Management Authority and the country program of Rwanda Country Program of Global Green Growth Institute. And what we looked at was addressing the causes of floods and landslides, looking at increased intensity of rainfall, poor ground saturation, increased volumes and velocity of runoff. This is greatly influenced by the rapid urbanization or difference or changes in land use. And then also uniquely, different parts of Rwanda have different terrain and land cover, which significantly influences the decisions that we make on which type of nature-based solutions to apply. We have 5 urban areas that we selected across the country. And these are Rusizi, Kamonyi, Huye, and the capital city of Kigali. Next slide, please. So what we focused on is looking at different aspects of nature-based solutions. But the initial start of our work was to do flood risk modeling and landslide risk assessment. And this informed flood and landslide mitigation measures that we would be able to implement specific to these unique locations. Noting what Isao also highlighted, that we appreciate that to have the desired impact, it is critical to have a hybrid solution. Nature-based solutions cannot work in isolation of the typical gray infrastructure that we are used to. As part of this, we elaborated runoff reduction guidelines, which will be applied in an urban setup. And these are prioritizing the use of nature-based solutions in various built environments. Next slide, please. This image just gives you an indication of the kind of flooding that we were facing. If you look at the left bottom of the screen, we had a lot of flooding occurring through our modeling. We were able to see that there's quite a significant element or aspect of flooding that is taking place in this select area of city of Kigali. Next slide, please. But when we started to simulate the application of various nature-based solutions as a way to reduce these flood risks, we started to introduce different nature-based solutions. Some of these are the typical bioswales, as well as the use of the wetlands for its restorative, as well as flood risk management. Next slide, please. We looked at different aspects of nature-based solutions, as I've said, upstream and downstream. Therefore, we had what we would call the introduction of one swale, 2 detention basins, and 1 modular attenuation storage tank. This we would call as interventions at a neighborhood scale or at an infrastructure scale. At the same time, we introduced household level nature-based solutions, which introduced elements such as green roofs, urban trees, and introduction of more permeable surfaces in neighborhoods that are already quite densely populated. This was also complemented with rainwater harvesting systems, which also supported the reduction of volumes of water. Next slide, please. When we implemented or when we modeled these nature-based solutions to address flood risks reduction in Kigali, or in this specific site of Kigali, we observed that upstream nature-based solutions would result in up to about 20 to 30% reduction in volumes and flows. And if we were to add then downstream nature-based solutions, we were actually potentially reaching a reduction of volume of runoff to about 50 to 60%, which is a positive impact in terms of flood risk management or flood risk reduction. Next slide, please. I also wanted to highlight a few key other interventions. In this case, I focused on what we were doing, what we were applying nature-based solutions for in terms of flood risk management. However, we have several other projects that are being implemented by other government organizations in collaboration with several development partners. And these include the Nyandungu Ecotourism Park, climate resilient road infrastructure, flood risk reduction in city of Kigali, looking at flood hotspots, and then the Green Gicumbi project. I selected these 4 because they explore different aspects of implementing nature-based solutions. So we look at restoration, we look at wetland restoration and forest restoration. We look at making our road infrastructure much more resilient to climate. We look at dealing with flooding hotspots within the city of Kigali. And then the Green Gicumbi project, we also look at the use of nature-based solutions in the agriculture or agricultural context or sector. All these nature-based solutions are targeting different benefits, direct benefits as well as co-benefits. I think some of them Isao has mentioned in his speech earlier. There's the flood risk management, ecosystem restoration and conservation, carbon sequestration, improvement of air quality, reduction of urban heat island effect, livelihoods improvement as we are creating employment through this, and lastly, ecotourism and recreation. Therefore, there have been extensive benefits from all these different projects that are simultaneously being implemented across the country. Next slide, please. I'll close here. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our experience in Rwanda, and I welcome additional questions at a later stage. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Great job, Lilian. Really great to see the quantification of those benefits and the different interventions. Really nice to see. So now we have an in-person presenter. We have Tom Lewis. Tom is the Climate Resilience and Sustainability Lead for WSP USA. So here you go, Tom.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. Hopefully, most of you know WSP. If you do, you probably know us as a large international engineering company. What you might not know is that we are now, as of the recent acquisition of the Wood Environment and Infrastructure Group, we're now the largest environmental consultancy in the world. So we're very well suited to present on the hybrid situation between gray and green infrastructure and give you some examples of that. So this first slide is just to kind of state a little bit of the obvious, which is this is the downtown New York City area depicted on the left. Is what it probably looked like before any development occurred, and then of course now in its stages of development. And you can see, obviously, destruction of natural resources occurs when urban development happens. That is unavoidable. What you hope to have happen is, and what we're here to talk about is, when you can't avoid those effects, you add in some green solutions to help mitigate and enhance the development. So why would you infuse green infrastructure into gray? Biggest reason is biodiversity. As we all know, and is being discussed a lot here at COP27, biodiversity is decreasing at the fastest rate in human history right now. And there are many ways you can build features into projects that can enhance biodiversity. And in fact, COP15 will be occurring a few weeks from now in Montreal, where we will be there in large numbers. That's our corporate headquarters there, actually, and it's all about biodiversity. So this is a big topic, and there's a lot of exciting things that are occurring in the industry, and also a lot of investment. A lot of private investment, ESG investment is occurring, which is really spurring on a lot of this innovation and emerging technologies. So what do you need to mainstream green infrastructure? You need to basically educate people on the different aspects of it, the value of nature-based solutions, their benefits, and how you can unlock this interest, this private sector interest, including the capital, and also to apply all these emerging technologies. But the key is to identify and quantify, promote the co-benefits of the green aspects of your gray-green hybrid solutions to unlock that interest, to unlock that investor capital, and what we refer to as blended finance, which is basically leveraging public sector money with private sector money. So just to share a few examples, this is the Living Breakwaters project in Staten Island, near where I live. And this is a great example of coastal protection in a developed residential area. And you can see here the recreational co-benefits that you get, but you also can see the wave protection that you get. And unlike traditional breakwaters that are very long, longitudinal piles of rocks, this was done in basically rubble piles that have more of a regular shape, which allows for a more diverse biodiversity to build up along the different ends of the rubble piles, and also allows for better flow for recreation and also for organisms, and in particular for the establishment of oyster beds. This is the Living Shorelines project in Apalachicola Bay in Florida, along the northwestern shores of Florida. And this is in tandem with a highway, a state highway along the coastline that was constantly eroding. And so here you're promoting the establishment of saltwater marshland, but also, again, establishing oyster reefs with emerging technology, these locally manufactured oyster pods that you basically put in the water and promote the establishment of the oyster beds in that way. And again, so it's not just one big long reef, it actually has more surface area to establish the oysters. Now getting more into kind of the urban environment. This is in Copenhagen, Denmark. This is an example of rain gardens and green space within a densely populated, densely developed area, which of course the green areas are there to absorb the runoff, direct rainwater, also take the runoff from roofs and the nearby pavements. Also lowers the heat island effect in the cities, and just is an enjoyable space for the local residents and visitors to visit. And also has air quality benefits as well from all the plants. So. And then this example is from Auckland, New Zealand. This is associated with building these swales, vegetated swales, along the streets, called the Green Street Stormwater Management Project. And cloudbursts as becoming a phrase of art nowadays. These dense, very intense urban storms that are occurring. These swales are very effective in absorbing the cloudburst rainwater directly, and again, also enhance the recreational usage of the area, but also lower the heat island effect and have the air quality improvements as well, and just look much nicer. And that's the last example I had, but I'll just add just one more. I don't have a slide on that because we're actually working on it right now, a white paper with Resilience First on carbon dioxide removal, carbon capture and storage. And people may not think of that as a green-gray example, but as I was getting ready to present today, I was like, well, actually it is, because carbon dioxide removal can, of course, be through plants and trees and that kind of thing, and there's a lot of projects like that. And then there's also the development of direct air capture, active industrial, commercial technologies that are capturing and storing the carbon as well. So yet another example of green-gray hybrid type solutions to help with climate change. So thank you.
Great job, Tom. Excellent examples. Really appreciate all those great examples. I think it's going to give some folks some good ideas. So I think we have the results of our first Menti poll. Correct? Were we able to pull those up? Yeah. That's okay. Great. So the question, what is the main barrier for implementation of nature-based solutions? And we see 25% responded with building the investment case, 44% the long-term operation and maintenance. Yeah, O&M is a real issue on these things, and I've seen that question pop up time and again. 10% said lack of skills to implement and manage nature-based solutions, 10% lack of monitoring and evaluation data, and 10% for other. So looks like the two main ones is building the investment case, and I think that's really like the business case that I mentioned earlier, and the O&M. So those are sort of the winning answers. Great, so now we're gonna move into our debate style portion of this session, and let me get my list to make some introductions. So we are going to be joined some virtual and some in person. So we have Jennifer Brunton, she's Vice President of Water Business Line with WSP. She's going to be virtual. We have Rowan Palmer, Program Officer with Sustainable Infrastructure with UNEP. We have Bryn Lindbland, she's in person, Deputy Director for Climate Resolve. And we have Anusha Shah. Anusha is Senior VP of the Institute of Civil Engineers and also a Senior Director at Arcadis. Now, we are going to move on to sort of our devil's advocates, right? Our devil advocates. And I'm going to read their names out. We have Pasquale Capizzi. He's the Associate Director for ARUP. We have Peter Hall, Vice President and Global Director of WSP. We have Rafael Della, Senior Economist, OECD, virtual. And we have Per Stahl. He's the Chief Impact Officer of Jaderberg and C. Did I pronounce that correctly? Close enough. All right, excellent. So some of them have already taken their jackets off, and I'm a little bit worried, but that's okay. Thank you for joining us virtually, and thanks for joining us in person. Did I get everyone? Did I miss anybody? Okay, great. I got them all. I know we had a long list. So we have a couple of sort of provocations that we're going to tee up, and would like some healthy debate on this. So the first one is, nature-based solutions are not financially viable, cost-effective, or scalable. And we hear that quite a bit, right? There's issues of really, how do they perform? So I throw that out there. So they're not financially viable, cost-effective, or scalable. Who would like to start?
Hi, I think it depends on how you're looking at the cost. So is it cost or value? Because if you're looking at the value of it and you see multi-benefits, and we saw so many presentations which actually clearly show the multi-benefits. So if it's multi-purpose, it's multi-benefit, it's multi-funded. So there you go, you've got the business case.
Yes.
I can't disagree with that. I think it's a wonderful example, and it's indisputable the usage of it. However, when it comes to funding, it seems to me that all of these examples we've seen has all been gearing towards the public funding side of things. So it's a cost, and in a public funding context, it's a very different environment when you look at cost versus benefit as opposed to in a private investment. And in my view, in order for this to actually happen on a grand scale that we really need, you really need to get the private side on board. And I haven't seen any data or something that is profoundly used that can drive down cost or create that cost benefit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we're talking about, is it investable? So do we have anybody online who would like to take that question? Do we get, yeah, oh, we got a hand up. Yes, you go, sorry, I couldn't see the screen well. You go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. I just wanted to jump in actually in response to the first point about, thinking about cost and value, and okay, cost may be higher, but it may be providing more value. In fact, some research done by our partners and neighbors here in Geneva at the International Institute for Sustainable Development, who've been analyzing cost benefit from a number of nature-based infrastructure projects. Their findings showed that based on the projects they analyzed, which admittedly is a relatively small sample size, the nature-based options were up to 50% cheaper than the traditional gray options. So here there's a cost advantage, and they were also providing 28% better value for money. So this is based on valuing some of those co-benefits and things provided. So I wanted to make that point, but then I guess in response to our devil's advocate point, I do think he raises a good point. A lot of these examples do come from public investment in these nature-based or green-gray infrastructure options. And I think that there is some more work that needs to be done to sort of make these types of investments work for private investors as well. And obviously more private investment is needed. I don't think we should sort of dismiss the public sector role. Globally, the public sector is still by far the biggest investor and driver of infrastructure projects. So it has a huge role to play, especially when we're talking about providing a lot of these public goods. So yeah, thanks.
Sorry, that's too easy. No, thank you. I was joking. But we hear this a lot, and we do see the social cost benefits analysis. We know that it's cheaper. But from a pension fund, from an investor perspective, I got no certainty that I'll get any return for my investment. It will take ages if I ever do get something in return. And quite frankly, I can't stop hotel development because I want to put mangrove in that particular place. And how are you going to create the equivalent 100 jobs just by immobilizing a land for 20, 30 years. Whereas with a hotel, quite frankly, I can have 100 jobs. So I'm hearing a lot of this, but not yet convinced. If there's anyone that can help me with that?
Just to add to what Pascal said, our problem with nature-based solutions is a lot of our projects we get CapEx to build them, but we don't have enough OpEx. So we really struggle with how the projects are going to deliver value over time. And we need partnerships. Some of the presentations mentioned partnerships. They're just really hard to develop, and they're not core to our business. So it's hard for us to invest in long-term partnerships that we need to measure the outputs. And measuring outputs for nature-based solutions are just really difficult. The people component. So it's just difficult. So that's some of the things.
Great, thank you for that. I think we have Jennifer, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is great debate, and to go to my friend about the hotel. I think that is the crux of the of what we're grappling with, in that nature-based solutions are appropriate and really cost-effective in many cases. There are always going to be those situations where they're not going to come out, of the red when they're against, something that's going to be such a high revenue generator. But just to go back to a spot where it is a financially viable option, one of the examples that Tom showed was this 12-mile stretch along the coastline in Florida, where the DOT had spent millions of dollars trying to interrupt the forces that were eroding the banks. And that's an evacuation route. So, really critical infrastructure. And the use of the nature-based solution has, all the beautiful co-benefits, but also is the lower costing option. It's something that we were able to install that's not going to have the millions of dollars that was previously invested. So it's finding those nuggets, those places where it is a viable solution. As some of the presenters before has mentioned, it's not perfect for every scenario. And our success is going to be where we infuse this green and these nature-based solutions with gray. But we have to make sure the onus is on us to make sure that we are applying them in places where we are going to have that positive cost-benefit ratio, where we are going to have that interruption of the forces, the processes, so that we can produce the results that we're looking for. Because anything that's new, it's innovative, right? We haven't crossed that chasm into the mainstream yet. It will set us backwards. And so, as practitioners, really the onus is on us to make sure that we're very thoughtful, and putting forth these options. But we also have to press the envelope because, it is a challenge. There is a lot of, there's the tried and true, where there's manuals where you can look at, 20, 50, 100 years where some other technique has been used. And so we do have to push the envelope, but we have to be smart about where we apply it, or else we'll find ourselves several steps back. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. I see, Lillian, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much. Mine is just to echo the importance of looking at nature-based solutions much more from the economic viability rather than just the financial viability. Look at the co-benefits that come from investing in nature-based solutions. If I use the context of Rwanda, the amount of money that is lost in trying to deal with issues of soil erosion, pollution, destruction of infrastructure, gray infrastructure that has been invested in, if that money could be put into nature-based solutions to complement the gray infrastructure, then definitely you have also a longer lifespan for your gray infrastructure as well. And I think also one critical thing, or one critical element to take into account, is that when we're talking about building resilience and approaching this from an adaptation perspective, the community is at the center of this. And so if you can protect the community from destruction of property, in my opinion, that's much more valuable than having the most latest technology in hotel management or in hotel design, because at the end of it all, who's going to work for that hotel if all of these people are going to be washed away by floods? So I think what's critical is to look at it from the economic viability, look at the social aspects of the benefits that come from these nature-based solutions. And also when it comes to OPEX, CAPEX and OPEX and maintenance and management of these nature-based solutions, it's critical to remember that the choice of the nature-based solutions is also very critical. In the Rwandan context, quite a bit of the nature-based solutions is actually managed or maintained by communities themselves. Communities are engaged and play a critical part in the establishment, the installation of these nature-based solutions, as well as their maintenance. So I think we also need to look at it much more from the economic viability and not focus entirely on the financial viability of this kind of investments. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I see we have another virtual participant with a hand up. Let's see.
Hi. Yes, I would like to reinforce the point of was made from the investor point of view. If I'm an ESG investor, so I want to invest in nature-based solution. What exactly am I investing in? Where are the opportunities? Where is the revenues coming back from this investment, repaying me for the investment over the long term? And I see the point of the economic return, which I would agree in principle, but I'm a pension fund and I need to pay my pensions. So if I'm stuck in any liquid investment for the long term and the market turns, as has been the case in the UK, not going far back, what am I going to do? Some of these investments are small scale. Think about green roof in urban biospheres. I'm a big pension fund. I'm not going to get my returns from this small investment. I cannot even access this small investment. So there is an issue with private sector investment in nature-based solution. Public funding, of course, but even there, talking about adaptation, what are my KPIs? Are those clear? Why adaptation financing is not actually flowing into adaptation more in general, nature-based solution, for example. So I think the case for the monetization of the co-benefit, the positive externalities, is still out there. There are many studies, but I don't see a common agreement and a common approach to that.
Excellent, thank you for that. So then we'll hand the mic over to Bryn.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Bryn Lindblad with an organization, Climate Resolve, a civil society organization based in Los Angeles, California. So we have the pleasure of getting to kind of speak truth to power often and representing community members who want their tax dollars spent effectively. So I thought I'd share with you some of the lessons we've learned, some pitfalls we've come across, because we have a history of, I think, over-promising what nature-based solutions can deliver and disappointing community members in the process if they're not designed holistically and taken as comprehensive solutions. So some examples, we've put in trees in our very hot urban environment, in our heat islands, and these trees either wither and die from that scorching heat, or don't grow to be big, healthy shade trees. They're kind of puny little twigs all along and don't deliver the environmental benefits that they were supposed to. We have a very compacted soil, urban environment. A lot of, hundreds of years of people living in that urban environment has made it not a hospitable, natural environment to be putting new plants in. So we'll have things where they'll try putting in a tree and the tree roots are then spreading and breaking up sidewalks. So we now have sidewalks where people can't go with wheelchairs or strollers, right? And really disappointing community members in that way too. So, we're also in a reality where our politicians like to devote funds towards capital infrastructure projects. They like doing the ribbon cutting, putting in new things, but aren't as keen to devote ongoing maintenance dollars to make sure that the projects are delivering long-term what they're supposed to. So I don't just want to leave you with problems, a few kind of solutions and things we've learned along the way, some workarounds. We've realized kind of to complement new greenery that we're putting into our really hot neighborhoods, we need to be using other cooling solutions also. So reflective surfaces is something, rather than being surrounded by hot asphalt in our city that's just baking these new plants. Things like designing tree wells that have a large enough soil cell so the roots can have room to expand and not be breaking up our sidewalks. And surrounding trees with bioswales so that when these more heavy rains come, there's a chance to slow down some of that rain and try to get some of the stormwater absorption. So otherwise, we're a pretty drought-prone climate. And so we're seeing, it's hotter, it's drier soil than ever before. And when the rain comes, those patches, those little tree wells they're not absorbing the rainwater that, that we've wanted them to. To get around kind of the maintenance issue and not having funds towards that, I'd recommend trying to get some gray infrastructure in there up front, some irrigation of recycled water in our case, so that you have a system in place. And sort of government jobs aren't always, there's kind of fickle budgets. And so we found a workaround. Often we have like climate core programs, so framing things as workforce development rather than kind of ongoing government employees has been a strategy to be able to take care of some of the green infrastructure we put in.
Thanks, Rod. I would just say if everyone remembers, when we had COVID, right? No amount of money saved those patients. People had money in their pockets, but no oxygen cylinders. So I think this whole emphasis on return on investment, money, driven by money constantly, COVID has taught us money can't buy you happiness, or money can't buy you peace, and money can't buy you security all the time. So this fundamental concept of return on investment needs to change. So it's return on investment in terms of quality of life. So if we can change our financial models, and there are tools out there. For example, in Arcadis, we've got a tool which exactly deals with, it's called the business resilience tools, which actually measures the social environmental benefits, and it maps it across to stakeholders. So stakeholders, if they're putting £1, so each of the stakeholder would get how many pounds they've increased, but dependent on what health benefits, value, health and well-being, and environmental benefits and social benefits there are. So there are tools. So I think all it needs is a mindset change. And talking about the government, now if you look at the public sector funding, why doesn't NHS and all these big infrastructure authorities can work together? Because NHS has funds and infrastructure authorities have funds. So some of the funding can be from the NHS funding for SUDS, for example. So as we know, I think there's enough evidence that if you have more blue-green spaces, it helps with your well-being. So that budget can be diverted to the infrastructure teams. And that deals with all your, that maintenance bar we just saw. So there are clever ways of doing things. I think we are too lazy and we are too cynical about things. That's one. And I'll just say my second point is sometimes it's just technically not feasible, and you've given some examples. So I think it's not a one-size-fits-all. Start with the green infrastructure, and if you can't, go with a hybrid, and if you can't, then go with the gray. But what we are trying to do, we're doing around a project, we do capital projects, and we then stitch a bit of green and say, oh, that's brilliant. There are pockets of lovely stuff, but so it needs a complete flip approach. So.
Anusha, thank you so much. Brilliant comment. Brilliant way to close out that question. Really. So, and it's a perfect segue to the next provocation. So, thank you, everyone. But did you have a last comment? Did you? Okay, if you can make it brief, very brief.
I think all the points are very valid. I'm not going to hold back that. However, when working in the investment world, the main factor of risk that anyone who's getting a proposition on their desk considers is not environmental, it's not financial, it's career risk. How are they going to look to their investment committee when they propose something that's a bit outlandish, a bit hippy-dippy? We're not going to think about money. Oh, hang on, money is my job. It's all I do. That's what I'm measured upon. what can one do to overcome this? How can we actually find something, some mechanism, and who does it, to enable these considerations to be taken in? Because we saw the example in your wonderful presentation of this very central part of Copenhagen. That's private land before the public bought it for a lot of money. Isn't it better that the private sector starts implementing this from the outcome? So how are you going to do that?
Sorry, I do need to. Sorry. Look, I wish I was in that seat because that's. But I played. I think the main problem here is that you want me as a financier, which I'm not, to think in your terms, and you refuse to think in mine. It's like I was asking a designer, don't mind all these numbers. These numbers don't really matter. You know, what really matters is that it looks good. You know, it doesn't matter if it stands or not. So I think one of the problems now, taking off the Davis hat, the Davis advocate hat for a second, is that construction industry in general, and by extension nature-based solutions, is fragmented because those that put the money, those that design it, those that build it, and those that ultimately use it and benefit from it are fragmented. It's a fragmented industry, by definition almost. And so if we keep on looking out of our window, just what we see, we don't see there's a window just there, this conversation is impossible. We'll never get to the point in which I do one step, I understand what the investors really need, and I respond to that. And then I ask them to make a step in my direction, and then we can change mindset. But the problem is sitting, and ideas with love, you know, from a global organizations, UN or a fund that says we need to change things, we need the SDGs. True, but the reality is what we have right now, we need to work with that. So if we don't all kind of look in through all the windows, 360 degrees, I don't think we're really going to make this work. Sorry, that wasn't my role really, but...
Very quick. The biggest issue we have, and I think in the industry, is co-benefits. Everyone talks about co-benefits. The projects provide benefits, social inclusion. They're just really difficult to measure. And flipping my hat off, we've done a screen for Rockefeller called TURF that specifically looked at how do you measure co-benefits so we can get these projects built, and then even more importantly, who owns the asset? So who's gonna take ownership so those co-benefits get delivered? And it's return on investment for the financial sector, but it's also return on investment for the communities because things get built. It remains a big challenge. That's one of the problems that we have.
Great argument. So I know we're probably running out of time for our I guess we have a couple of minutes left. You need to wrap. But is there any last comment from our panel, our virtual panel? I just want to give you guys a last chance to make a comment. Is there anyone who wanted?
If I
yes, please.
Please.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay,
Lilian,
okay,
please.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Just to brief remarks. So my name is Raffaele Lacroce. I didn't introduce myself before. I'm from the OECD. Two additional remarks to the challenges that we face listening to the comments. One is on priority and mindsets, which was mentioned before. So when I look at from a policy standpoint, and I think about nature-based solution, yes, of course, biodiversity and adaptation are major priorities, but they're not the only ones. Mitigation is a priority for many countries these days. And just for lack of capability, sometimes, I don't see several administrations I've been working with capable of actually implementing also reforms, implementation at the level of biodiversity and adaptation. And that to leave aside energy security, poverty, anything associated with the current context in relation to the gray infrastructure. And to this point of gray infrastructure, that's what I asked to you and to myself. Are we sometimes preaching to the converted on nature-based solution? Shouldn't we have here an infrastructure minister telling us how does these tools, which were mentioned, can integrate the consideration for nature-based solution along the stages of the planning and delivery of infrastructure? And that's not an easy one, because we know how complex it is to deliver infrastructure projects and how countries in developed and developing countries are struggling to that. And for many, the additional layer of considering nature-based solution, of course, from their point of view, is just an additional problem to their task.
Excellent, thank you. I think we're probably running out of time. I need to kind of pass it over to Savina at this point. I'm sorry, oh yes, Menti results. Yes, Menti results. Can we pull those up, please? So this should be sort of which side prevailed is what we're looking at. All right, great. I'm just going to stand up and look at this. Wow. Overwhelmingly, what do we have here? So nature-based solutions have strong potential as a climate solution, but they are not currently fulfilling that. Wow. Compared to 8%, nature-based solutions are the silver bullet we've been looking for. Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for everyone participating in the Menti poll. This is a really rich debate. I really appreciate everybody's engagement, your ideas. I think it really made us think about this. Is it investable? You know, thinking about all those issues about the pension funds and things, and it really, I think, will make us develop a stronger argument for nature-based solutions in green-gray infrastructure. Sabina, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was quite exciting to watch from the audience, and I think the virtual audience probably also appreciate as much as I did. So time to go to Rohan, if possible, to see his work.
Absolutely, that was a very cracking debate. My cartoons are ready. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay, here we go. For the sake of everybody's convenience, I'm going to read out the captions. The best thing about nature-based solutions is that they never have to be reminded about keeping their promises at international climate conferences.
That's great.
The second one, advertising nature-based solutions. In the first panel, we have biodiversity conservation, livelihoods, climate resilience, and more. And the funder is yawning. In the second panel, we've got return on investments guaranteed. And the funder takes a dip into the water saying, take my money.
Yes.
Here's the third one. We've got two sides, gray infrastructure and gray-green infrastructure, and a bird promoting, saying, stressed about premature graying? Call our experts now. And the final one, conventional engineering and hybrid solutions. Time to evolve. It's the era of inclusion. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Those are really brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. So we probably have I'll do a round of kind of feedback, and maybe of the 4 cartoons, maybe here amongst our speakers, which one you would prefer? Just give us one.
I think it was really good. I loved the yawn. I could see all the financial professionals. Yeah, we hear you. But I think what I liked was it's, when I saw it, that's how I took it, because I could see it from an angle. The gray infrastructure, it was always as if it was dissolving, whereas the green infrastructure was as if it's viable. But then ultimately he did say that there's a middle ground, that you sometimes need hybrid solutions. So that's the place.
Yeah, I think I'll choose that hybrid snail at the end there. I thought we were getting into a debate where it was going to be gray versus green, and I was going to try to take the middle ground, but it seems like there's a lot of agreement that hybrids are needed.
I concur with both your observations. I really liked both. Liked all of them. Very good.
No, I think it's difficult to pick. They're great. But it's also very difficult to disagree that, this is really what we need to do. We need to make this work. I see no other way to really continue in infrastructure without, investing more on nature. This, to me, is...
Yeah, and the one that says, take my money, it's easy, it actually highlights what we talked about, because I think there's a perception that it's easier than it is, and that the panel was great because it highlights, I think, understanding our clients and their challenges, sort of putting yourselves in their shoes, will keep us sharp and build more projects.
And our virtual panelist, Rowan, maybe you're top left on our screen.
Yeah, thanks. I liked the, I think it was the third one with the, premature graying, which I think, highlights one of the positive aspects of certain nature-based infrastructure options, and that they themselves, they may be implemented right away to address, to increase climate resilience, but they can also be more resilient to stresses and impacts of climate change than gray solutions necessarily can.
Great, thank you. I have Isao, comment?
Yes, just a quick comment. I really enjoyed the discussion, which was very informative to me. My last one comment is that probably we need a very compelling business case that is technically feasible and financially viable. And we should have also a set of figures that can justify our investments, whether it is green or gray. So that's what I thought during when I was listening to the discussion. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Lilian?
Thank you very much. Rohan, those were amazing. I love them all. I think I'd go with the one where we have the private sector debating about the investment. I come back to the same argument I had at the beginning, and as a rebuttal to Rafaela's earlier comments. I think there is still a case for private sector to invest, because if I use the example of modern neighborhoods now, you'll get a premium property going at a much more premium value because it's right next to a specific nature-based feature, if I can put it that way. So I think there's still room to make the case, and I think there's still room for private sector to be directly involved, directly invest, and directly reap a positive rate of return. It's just how we table it, the choice of nature-based solutions, and how we pitch it. It comes down to that. But I think there is still definitely a positive business case for this.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And then Rafael, you're next on our screen.
Yeah, thank you. Inclusion. Inclusion is the key word, which was in the last of the drawing. Nice drawing. The solution are gray plus green, hybrid solution. I do believe that we're gonna get there, and I do believe in the business case which can be made, although there is work to be done. And these have to be included, an inclusion approach, inclusive approach with public sector, private sector, but also engineering, in particular, the engineering community. And lastly, the community, social community.
Thank you. And Jennifer.
Myself, the cartoon with the yawn for sure got my the most chuckles, and I feel like there's likely different boxes that we could put between the yawn and the investor running in with the money, and it's about, I think, reshaping. Maybe it's not the appropriate question. Is there, the right return on investment? What is the correct measuring stick? What is the correct motivator? I think it's about asking those questions. It's great to hear a few of the different panelists here talked about, different guidelines or, ways of how do we measure those co-benefits. And so, it's I feel like, I'm constantly dealing with the yawn, and trying to make sure we frame the question correctly, but also make sure that, when we are at that point of in the debate for the green, for the nature-based solutions, we're setting ourselves up for that success. We're not trying to put the round peg through the square hole.
Excellent, thank you. Perfect. Rohan, your favorite?
Oh, I think it has to be the first one where she says nature-based solutions do not have to be reminded about their commitments. But yeah, thanks for the discussions and the analysis. That was very enriching.
Can we just round of applause for Rohan work? I mean, amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, to conclude a very, quite brilliant session, I really enjoyed it. Thank you everyone who participated online, in the room, Thank you to everyone who joined us online. I know it's been quite a lot of interaction in the chat and in the Mentimeter, so that's great. I'd like to remind everyone we've got a resource page on the Resilience Hub website. All the resources that were mentioned during the presentations, they're all linked in there, so that's a good thing. All the presentations will also be available, so, and within the presentation there are hyperlinks, so wealth of information available to you. Thank you very much again, and I'll just close it. Thank you.